leave this, and you comfy like that?
Yes.
Yep. Alright mate, that should be fine. So, you grew up in Victoria, near Maryborough?
Yes.
On a farm?
Well, my mother had a shop,
Okay.
and unfortunately it was burnt. And I don't like to say it, but she was a fairly fertile woman, and the old man was a fairly randy old coot, and she was constantly getting pregnant.
Having babies?
And, well, she never had the babies.
Okay.
They had Granny Wilson's pills.
Yeah. And that would bring on
And
temptation.
that was like abortions,
Yeah, yeah.
self-inflicted abortions. They go back to the year dot.
Yeah.
And she was getting these Granny Wilson's pills.
And using that as
And
birth
she
control.
never cleaned after an abortion, and she died from septicemia.
Okay, there you go.
Anyway,
How old were you when your mum died?
in 30,
Okay.
I was 2.5.
Yep.
Well, I had an uncle and aunt, a brother and sister, on a farm at Talbot,
Okay.
Stony Creek. Well, they adopted us, and I grew up there. Grew up, dragged up, whatever you like to.
Whatever way you want to
And I
describe
got
it.
such a doing that I was traumatised by the time I was 10.
Yeah.
10 or 11, I thoroughly traumatised me. Never really got over it.
Yeah, understandable.
They were Welsh,
Mhm.
and they had the belief that spare the rod and spoil the child.
Yeah.
But to cut it short, I had a reasonable education, and I went to Melbourne. I was in Melbourne for 10 years,
Okay.
and my health was going down in the smog and that.
Mhm.
I was working next to the explosive factory,
Okay.
and the air was full of nitro,
Lovely.
and my breathing and everything was failing.
Yeah.
And I had a trip in New South, like peak hunting,
Okay.
and that, and my
Up in the
health.
Channel Country? In the Channel Country?
I can't really recall. It was west of Mildura,
Yeah, yeah,
east of Mildura,
yeah.
and my health improved straight away. I decided to go bush. I went bush, and I spent time rabbit hunting, roo hunting, horse hunting for the pet food trade.
Okay, yeah. Was this in the 50s, 60s?
Yes.
Yep.
I went up there about 55,
Okay.
and I spent about 10 years at that, with many experiences.
Yep.
And on one occasion, I dropped a couple of mares, and I heard a noise behind me, and I looked around. There was a stallion coming at me, and it was reared up and giving a horrible bloody look. So I screwed around into a fetal position, tucked the stock under my arm, and fired and blew its head off. Also got a weathery eye. It split out the eye from the scope,
Oh, okay.
but it dropped the horse pretty well within touching distance.
Bloody lucky.
So that was one of the occasions I saw the waters come up.
Was that with a shotgun? Was that with a shotgun?
No,
right.
303.
303. No, well, that'll stop it dead in its tracks.
But all that was left was his ears hanging on strips of skin.
Jesus.
The head just exploded.
Yeah, at that close range it would.
Yes,
Yeah, they're a big round.
one of my few lucky calls. Anyway, I finally gave up the hunting.
Yeah.
Worked for the highways for 10 years.
Okay.
Worked up to top job top bush job. I saved the highways about $1 million and got the sack. Too many people wanted to cut at that $1 million.
Yeah, right.
And I was too close to the chief engineer.
Right.
He used to come to me for advice.
Yeah.
And this is getting away from the hunting, but some of the thingos in my life.
Sure.
I was given the job of measuring the flow in the Cooper.
Oh, really?
At the punt.
Yep.
And well, I said to the engineer, how the hell do I do that? He said, I don't know, but you'll think of something. Well, I did a cross section of the river, and I had a stopwatch and a beer bottle, and I measured up 100 metres. And I dropped the bottle overboard and drifted down with the bottle, sort of covered the 100 metres,
yeah,
and work out the velocity, and from that work out the flow.
Okay.
Anyway, they couldn't accept it. They sent up the waterworks, the latest equipment and so forth, and a gang of men, a string of trucks, and they did an examination of it, and the figure they got was near as to what I got, with a beer bottle and a stopwatch.
That was where you started saving the money.
So that was the rebuilding of the punt crossing.
Okay.
In 57, I think, something like that. So that's only by the way.
Is that on the Udna data track?
Hmm?
Is that on the Udna data track?
No.
Strzelecki. Strzelecki. So that's up near Inaminka.
Yes.
Okay.
Anyway, I did a lot of work on the Udna data track to rebuild some of that.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of it.
I've done both of those tracks. You'd be pleased to know. I did the Udna data track in 2001. We went to the Birdsville races.
Yes.
And then I did the Strzelecki track in 2000 when we went up there when the Cooper was flowing.
Sure.
And fished it.
But anyway, we're getting sidetracked a bit.
That's all right. So
Okay.
you started working out in the bush for the highways, doing a lot of the remote area stuff.
Well, I started out in the bush as a hunter,
Yeah,
a
okay.
pro hunter,
Yep,
trapper and hunter.
yep. So when you were out there doing the stuff for the highways, did you have any experiences with big cats or thylacines or anything then?
No.
No? It just happened later in life?
Oh,
So your experiences with these cryptozoological animals, they started later on in life?
yes, in 81, or was it 82, about that time,
Okay.
I at Talbot, and I was still a kid there, when I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
This would be 37.
Right, okay.
One night, I heard a screaming, and the screaming went on and on and on. Now I knew darn well it wasn't a bitch fox, because a bitch fox will scream and then it'll move.
Yep.
But this thing stayed where it was, and over those years I never forgot it. And it wasn't until I heard the cat screaming that I knew what it was. And that was in 37,
Right.
when I was 10 years old.
That was your very first experience?
My first experience, well, I didn't know what it was,
Yeah, but you knew it wasn't a fox.
but I knew that it wasn't a fox and had to be something else.
Awesome.
Anyway, in the late 80s,
Yeah.
I'd been to, I think we might have been to Queensland for some big function up there.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was, but I pulled up, I stayed a while with a sister at Newcastle, and come on down to out of Victoria, and there was sheep being killed, and the animals being seen. So the thing was, which meant early in the piece, the woodcutters would talk of seeing animals. They'd see black animals, yellow animals, and striped animals. Of course, they looked on as being lunatics.
Yeah.
Rubbish.
Yeah.
So it was all passed over as rubbish.
Yeah.
Well, when I got back there in the late 80s, they were having sheep killed. And what the hell happened? Well, that's my first knowledge
Something
of the cats.
Yeah, okay. In the late 80s. And this was in what area? In Victoria?
Hmm?
This was in Victoria?
Yeah, central Victoria.
Central Victoria, okay.
So eventually, a cat was taking three lambs a night. So I'd been to Canada, and I brought back a wolf trap.
Okay.
It was an antique. The only way I got it into the country was to mobilise it and call it an antique.
Yeah.
Woman said, "Good God, is that an antique?" I said, "Of course it is an antique." But I had this wolf trap, and I set that, and I knocked over an old ewe and pegged it down and set the trap alongside it. And the animal came and took both sheep from upside from the trap. They couldn't come near the trap. So anyway, I finally gave up on that. It was absolutely rotten. So I took the trap away, and the sheep was entirely eaten. It was just a mass of maggots.
Yeah.
And it was entirely eaten. So anyway, to cut it a bit shorter, there was a ewe and a lamb killed.
Yeah.
And so the nephew, he had a toxin there. It was actually a sheep dip that had been banned, Lucy jet. And people were using it to poison copies.
Yeah.
And it was banned, but the brothers still had a bottle of it.
Yeah.
And Lucy jet. Anyway, the nephew inoculated the ewe and the lamb with this Lucy, I think Lucy jet.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the next night, the 3 lambs were gone, and the cat never seen again. There's some foxes and hawks and whatnot had a go at the ewe,
Yeah.
and they were dead.
So you reckon that the cat would have got a dose and gone away and died somewhere?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was the end of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my first experience.
Yeah.
Well, then I heard that there was a panther seen out in the ranges west from Port Augusta.
Okay.
And so my reasoning for the, I forget the name of the ranges, but there was
Not
a
the Gammon Ranges out there, is it? Not the Gawler Ranges?
Yeah, Gawler Range.
Yeah, Gawler Ranges, okay, yeah.
And I knew a woman, she went by the name of Catgill. She come to into the country, and she was studying marsupial mice.
Okay.
And so I got onto her. she married a fella up there. She came up studying mice, but all she could find was all that bloody big rat. So she married him. So I asked her if she knew people out in the Coral Ranges, and asking about these big cats out there. And the answer came back, yes, there's a lot of them out there. My reason for them to get there, they would have had to go through the Flinders.
Yeah.
And I had a big cat. I had a big cat living on my floor. And but it would come out, I'd be sitting reading of a night outside the back door in the shade. And the thing would come up and sit near me. And I would talk to it, and they'd answer me. Well, anyway, I had chooks, and I was fouling chooks. And something started knocking them around, getting in and ripping feathers out of them. And so I couldn't have that. And so this here cat, it was a whopper. It walked behind a sheet of iron, so I poked the gun around the corner and pulled the trigger and blew it to pieces. So I jumped and carried on for a while kicking. And that night I noticed that the wire of the chook yard had been punched. Anyway, that night I heard this roaring outside. Ooh. Oh. And when it gave a roar, all the bottles on the dressing table jumped up and down.
My goodness.
So I realised then that it was a cat, and I'd shot a kitten.
A kitten.
It was nearly 3'6" long.
A kitten.
A kitten. It had two adult teeth and milk teeth. It was fat as mud, full of bloody big worms. So I scanned it. And for reasons unknown, I decided that it had to catch a feral. And I should have known better. And I threw its remains away. I kept the skull. And I took it to the museum.
The Adelaide Museum.
Showed it to a woman there, and all she said was a cat, a diseased cat. When, you know, the two teeth, you know, bloody teeth that long.
I'm just trying to say it's a
and
domestic
the
cat.
adult teeth in the rear.
Yeah.
The rest was still falling out.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, I realised then that we had a cat living around the town.
This is in Parachilna?
Parachilna.
Yeah.
And it was a big railway camp.
Yeah.
And they had the fitters used to camp there. And they were on the herd, well and truly herd.
Okay.
And one night they're in the caravan, and underneath the caravan I hear this "Arrrrrrrr." So next night the caravan's sitting on the ground and sleepers around it. Well, that cat lived on, and she still had a black kitten, but I'd made a trap, and she living out of the town bit. But anyway, I make this trap, a big cage trap.
Yeah.
And I had it set up across the road from the town. And I had a dead shook in it. One night it had been set off. Obviously the thing poked its foot in the side, poked its hand in the side.
And set the trap off.
And set the trap off. And it was a big sheet of steel for a door. It come down with a hell of a bang. And the dirt's all dug up where the cat took off.
Yeah.
And that mother cat never came near the town again, but the kitten lived on.
Right.
This black kitten. And I got a series of prints as it grew up.
Yeah. And
it used to camp under my house. She walked past at night when she was always wandering through my yard. I'd sleep out at night, and there were tracks alongside the bed. I'd wake up thinking something had breathed on my face, and in the morning there'd be her tracks alongside my bed. She'd check me out. Often she did that.
These are before the days of trail cams. These are before the days of trail cams. This was, back in the 80s, was it? Early 90s when you were living there?
Probably were. I don't know, memories of it. But anyway, she was there for 8 years.
Yeah.
And I saw in that time, I saw her twice. She was around me all the time.
Yeah.
She'd come at night, she had the kitten on, she'd park her kittens on my floor, and she'd come at night to feed them.
Yeah.
And she'd be out and around her under the window, and she'd be purring like a chainsaw. And I'd try to sneak to get a look at her, and she'd always gone. Well, it was a wooden floor, and it probably squeaked enough for a shrink quartet.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's always gone. She'd be just around the corner, but she always moved off, or moved off. Well, she raised a number of litters.
Yeah.
But the original female, she never come near the town again. We had a bird woman, and she'd be out looking for birds in the sandhills, and this year cat would follow around and sit there when she'd be looking for birds.
She had no idea?
Well, we had a group of university students come, and they're looking for lizards. I was out with them, and a lizard dived into a clump of blue bush, and this professor fellow dropped on his knees and shoved his hand in and grabbed something and pulled out a brown snake. Now, one of the sweet young things asked how to tell a male from a female. He said, feel between the legs. I said, we all know that. They all went blush.
So, being up in the Flinders most of these last 20 odd years, I suppose, is that fair to say? Up in the Flinders Ranges here?
Well, from 87.
From 87 onwards you've been up in the Flinders.
No. 85. Living in the Flinders.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 80, 80, in the middle 80s I moved down there and worked the highway in the railways a couple of years.
Yeah.
I resigned in 91.
Okay. So have you ever found any evidence of Thylacoleos in the Flinders?
No.
No? Only in Victoria?
Um,
Not elsewhere in South Australia?
down the south.
Southeast?
Southeast.
Yeah, along the Coorong and stuff.
And information like down where the fossil caves are.
Oh, Narracor, around that way. Yeah.
I got information back from there.
Okay.
But anyway, I realised then that they had the cats in the Flinders, and around where I was living was really a hot spot.
Yep.
Well, I had that black cat under observation for 8 years. I saw it twice. We had a camel man there that built a stone hut.
Okay.
He left a hole in the roof to put in a window. And I gave a call one morning to have a cuppa and a yarn, and it's blocked up. The hole's blocked up. I thought you said you were going to put in a skylight. What have you blocked it up for? He said, you would block it up too if you had a bloody big cat up there looking in at you. He cooked me a stew or something, and he happened to look up, and there she was, sitting on the edge of the hole,
watching him.
So anyway, she took off, and what the hell happened? Yeah, there's a Tom came around. The Tom come visiting.
Yeah.
And we'd follow their tracks of a morning, check up on the tracks in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
There's very dewy, and they're good tracks in the sand. But anyway, he must have been a pretty randy little cat, and he was fairly vigorous. You'd see where he'd been mounted, and digging the ground up. And so when she'd had her fill, she was giving him the chook. And the camel man was in bed one night, and the cat was growling and snarling, and terrible Tom was whinging and sweet talking it. At last, the camel man couldn't take it any longer. He got the poker and went out to deal with him. Well, the Tom took off in a twinkle, and she just stood at him and casually walked off, watching him.
She obviously knew her place in the town.
Yes, just out of town a bit.
Yeah.
Well, I realised I could have got photographs if I had a thought of it.
Yeah.
But I had a telescopic lens,
Yeah.
like a gun barrel,
Yeah.
and I could have sat back in half a mile, and I could have got photographs of it. In the morning, when he was building his hut, he'd walk across to the pub and have a shower and breakfast, and maybe spend time working at the pub, or else walk back to his gypsy, and the cat would follow him across and wait and follow him back. She's right behind him everywhere he went. Well, I got at a spot where it crossed open ground, no doubt I could have taken. Of course, you don't realise things.
Yeah, well,
only in
this is it.
hindsight.
Yeah. So when you went over to the Gawler Ranges looking for big cats, did you have any success?
No, I never went to the Gawler Ranges.
Oh, you just spoke to the lady about it?
Only talking to people.
Oh, okay, yeah. Did you ever receive or hear of any thylacine sightings in the Flinders Ranges?
I'm trying to remember.
Or over on
I
Eyre
don't think
Peninsula?
so.
I've actually got sightings from over on Eyre Peninsula,
Yes.
out near Gillies Conservation Park, out there in the middle.
Yes.
And a friend of mine was horse riding near Port Augusta back in 1970 and saw one when they were on horseback.
Yes.
That, oddly enough, is the same friend that found the Thylacoleo print down the road away from here. So, yeah, and now she's in Queensland and still finding prints. So, yeah, she's very lucky in that way.
Is there any man in West Australia?
Yeah, Western Australia gets a lot of sightings, especially down the southwest, down the bottom, and on the Nullarbor as well. There's quite a few sightings.
Yes. And they've got bobcats on the Nullarbor.
Yep.
And various interbreeding with American bobcat.
Okay. With the short tail.
Yes.
Yep.
And the tufted ears.
Yep.
And so there's cats out there. When I was last in contacts,
Yep. With those people.
there were cats with tufted ears and long tails.
Yeah, it's like a bit like a lynx.
You can't crossbreeds.
Yeah. Well, they breed with all the ferals out there as well, I suppose, wouldn't they?
And well, actually, they got them across Victoria.
Hmm?
They're across Victoria.
As well.
Port Augusta.
Yeah.
There's one scene out of Port Augusta.
Yep.
There's a fellow shot one. Unfortunately, he shot the thing, and he had, I think it might have been vines, and he tossed it under a vine.
Yeah.
He did it later, and had a heart attack. And while he's away getting cured of his heart attack, his friends moved in with a working bee, cleaned the place up.
And threw it away.
And threw it away.
Ah. It's always the way, isn't it? I did hear of a dentist down in the southeast that shot a thylacine. Didn't know what it was until he went to pick it up, and then panicked and went and buried it somewhere on his property. But he never told anyone where he buried it because he was always worried that he was going to get in trouble for it, and he felt bad, I think, that he shot such an animal.
I've heard several cases like that.
Tell me, can you tell me about the little hairy people of the Gammon Ranges?
Okay.
The little hairy people of the Gammon Ranges.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about them?
Well, I was rabbit trapping. This was fairly early in the piece. 55. Oh. About 56, I suppose.
Yep.
I was trapping up there. This is the top end of the Gammon Ranges.
Yep.
And at the edge of the native land. And I was losing rabbits out of the trap. And the small childlike footprints. And I chipped the old dark people, tell the kids to leave my traps alone. If they wanted meat, I'd get all the meat they'd want, but leave my traps alone. Ah, boss, he said, that's not kid was. That bad place, boss. That very bad place. We not go there. And you go somewhere else, boss. Well, anyway, I stayed put, and I still, these mystifying footprints, which I still reckon were kids, well, I caught a fingernail. So I reckon it was a bad place, boss, and went elsewhere. As I realised, there was something, and I didn't want a rock drop on me. Well, the time went by, and went other places and that. And the Aboriginals up there from the reserve and Original. There was two mobs there, and they never ever. There was the Adnamanthas,
Yeah.
and the another mob,
Okay.
and they were shoved in together, and they were still strangers to each other.
Yeah.
And they finally split, and one of them had some land nearby, and so they moved there. And they were building, and this little hairy man walked past and kept on going. They tried to run him down, but it disappeared. So I started looking into it. I started picking up these stories about them.
Right.
And the old men wouldn't talk about them.
Yeah.
The old women would talk of their experiences when they were girls.
Yeah.
And I could talk all day about that, but the fact was that I was looking for trying to get concrete evidence on them. And the young fellows talked about it.
Yep.
And a few mysterious things getting on the bit of the outer that I won't talk about. But
and do you think every reason to believe those little hairy people are still up there today?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
No reason to believe.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So the black fellas up there were basically saying it's a bad place, don't go there, boss. The black fellas that you knew from Nepabana, they were all saying bad place, don't go there, boss. Not a good place.
It was taboo country.
Right.
Absolutely taboo country.
And this is because of the little black hairy people?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, there was a couple of educated dark women turned up.
From Adelaide?
Yes, university.
Yep.
And they were going to spoof it. These here are wives' tales.
Yep.
They're going to spoof it. So they hike through this country to see a voodoo country in the Camerons. Well, they were grabbed, they held down and scorched out with fire sticks and turned loose. Well, when they got back to the place, their feet were nearly on fire. All they did was jump in their car and bolt. So they knew all about it being taboo country.
And they knew it wasn't a myth.
Well, it was no myth then.
This is in the 1980s as well? Was this in the 1980s as well, or?
Yeah, later date from that.
1990s. Yeah.
Okay.
Not that long ago.
Not that long ago.
Yeah.
This camel man I knew was very close to the Aborigines.
Yeah.
And also some of the young fellows. These fellows there, I gave them their first jobs.
Yeah.
And taught them how to write their names when I was in the railways.
Yeah. So they had respect.
I was a clerk in the railways.
Yeah.
Well, the second job I had in the railways was as a clerk. And these coming out of school, they couldn't read or write. And they appreciated what I did for them.
Sure.
They all treated me with respect.
Yeah.
And when I was at Thylacine, they looked on that as a halfway house, and they drop in for a cuppa and that, and they drop in stuff for them.
Yeah.
The fish and the likes of that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway,
Always looking out for you.
they'd tell me stories about them.
Yeah, about the little people.
Because the little fellas, they were pretty randy little blokes, and putting the hard word by signing with the women. And I can't say one way or the other, but around Copley there were very short people there. Very short people and fairly heavy.
Yeah.
So I'd say they were interbreeding with the
humongous people.
With the blacks.
Yeah. That's interesting. So is there a mission at Copley, or is there just a station, or is it a town? What's at Copley?
Copley's a town.
Okay.
A small town.
But all the black fellas up there are quite small.
Were. Well, I saw some before.
Yeah. I went out with a Nattangeli woman from down the Pirie about 10 years ago, and they were all very small and very hairy, and the men had huge hands. Like a bloke 5 foot tall would have a hand, and his fingers would be that much longer than mine.
Yeah.
And my thumb was the size of his pinky, and he was only a fella 5 foot tall.
Yes.
But they were very, very big hands, very strong, and only very short people, but they were very hairy because they were down by the coast, I suppose, and they needed to stay warm. So they had all that extra body hair.
Cool.
But yeah, it's interesting that you hear of these different body types, I suppose, of Aboriginal people in different regions, so they've sort of evolved differently.
They communicate with whistles.
Yeah.
This was what the old women would tell me.
Yeah.
I used to go to senior citizen.
Yeah. So the old women weren't too partial to the little hairy men back in the day.
Well, apparently some must have clicked.
Not enough.
But they go picnicking with a camp, with a bunk car.
Yeah.
And go out and camp. And the hairy people would be whistling to them.
To bring them food.
Well, whether they could contact, I don't know, but that's what they were saying. And if the hairy men were around, the girls would hide under women's skirts.
So why are they going to get nabbed?
Yeah, get kidnapped.
Yeah. That would have happened, no doubt, over the years. Some of them would have been taken.
Well, apparently it was so.
Yeah.
Whether they survived, I don't know. How long they survived.
Yeah.
I've got no idea of knowing. And anyway, we're still getting away from the whales. A fellow from Queensland wrote to me.
Yeah.
That I really forget the date, but it must be about 40 years ago.
Okay.
During a trip around Australia, and somewhere out along the Pilbara, they got video of an animal. I think I've got a copy of it here. They got a tape.
Yeah.
And I had a translation.
Onto DVD.
I think so.
Yeah.
And anyway, they were photographing birds, and they'd taken up a stand and looking back up the road with tele lens. This animal came out of the scrub, and it looked like a starved greyhound.
Right.
Long legs, and the front of it was like a wallaby, and a great long tail with a tuft on the end of it.
So this was a thylacine?
No, not a thylacine.
Something else?
And it was something else. Well, I called it the critter. where did I say it was?
Pilbara.
Yeah, I called it the Pilbara critter.
Okay.
It had long jaws and ears on it like a donkey. And the front of it was rounded like a marsupial. Well, it came out and it was eating at roadkill, and it turned and went back into the scrub and came out again. Well, the fellow sent me this tape. I sent it back to him eventually. I have copies of it. And a friend in West Australia sent me a newspaper cutting from that area of this animal that was roadkilled, and they're all mystified as to what it was, and the worth and the pictures of it. Well, it had recurved teeth. These fucking big recurved teeth.
Okay.
And these big ears. So I had one of my friends that worked that area, truck driving, who I had him to keep a lookout for it. I used to see quite a lot of thylacine along there.
Yeah.
So, well, I can't remember too much about that incident, but I remember the pictures quite well.
So the pictures made it to the local paper up there?
The pictures was on the tape.
Okay.
And well, I don't know, the copies of the newspaper picture.
Yeah.
I think all that stuff went to Victoria. All the records and so forth. But anyway, that was one mysterious.
Yeah.
And well, I had a camel woman came through once and had a buggy wrecked. And I was rebuilding it for her.
Oh yeah.
She came from Alice Springs and kept granting from the station out in the northwest from there, and spoke of gigantic lizards up there, and a horse being ripped over.
Really?
The fellow had been tossed and killed. The horse arrived back, his chest all ripped open, and had arrived home and died on the spot. Oh, I forget the names of the things. But that's another thing that I heard of the mysteriousness.
The lizards.
These giant lizards. I've got a cousin who's in Narrabri way in New South Wales.
Yeah, I know Narrabri.
And he's down Dubbo to start with. I grew up around Narrabri way. What the hell happened? He was contributing to a hunting magazine.
Okay.
Newsletter. And he used to poke a bit of rubbish at me and my cats. So he wrote in to say that he's got this cousin. He was having doubts about my mentality, having these cats, until he himself was driving through the whatever scrub.
Pilliga. Pilliga scrub.
And a black leopard crossed the road in front of him. So he'd seen one for himself.
Brightened his act up a bit.
So he sort of let me off the hook. I wasn't going off the head anyway. But anyway, he, they're talking of the Queensland tiger. It was a little mysterious.
Yeah, this is the one that they think might be different again from Thylacoleo.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it's got actual stripes, this one, hasn't it?
Anyway, the dog-headed cat.
Yeah, that's the one.
Well, he was doing the rounds with the local parson. Boundary riding with the local parson. And they're driving through the Pelican.
Yeah.
And he said, this is where I saw the black leopard. And the parson said, you know about him, do you? And we said, yes, he'd seen one. And in the talking, they came across a fellow up there that was keen on thylacines and talking about a weirdo animal that has been shot. And the skin was still being held, and it was about 100 years old. So I got a fella, Mike Williams.
Yep, I know Mike.
I put him on the trail, and he tracked it down and actually handled the skin.
He got to handle the skin, did he?
Yes.
Wow. So the skin still exists?
Yeah, apparently.
Yep. And it's in private hands?
And it was, he got a few hairs of it, and more or less like, not a fur, more like a head, a stiff hair.
Okay. That might be more for waterproofing up there with the rain, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
That type of hair might be more for waterproofing, do you think?
It is.
Yeah.
But, that's all written up in the book he wrote.
Mike Williams.
Yes.
Yeah, he stayed at my house in Tasmania.
It is.
Yeah, my house is actually called Tassie Tiger Lodge, and I've set it up as a holiday house because it's right in the middle of good tiger country.
Yes.
And Mike Williams and his wife Rebecca and a couple of other fellas from Germany and Finland, I think, went out and stayed there for about nearly 2 weeks in February last year, early February last year, and they got interviewed by a fella from the Australian magazine, actually, from the Australian newspaper.
Yeah.
In Melbourne, and yeah, they did a big spread on my house in the paper. I got some good advertising out of that for free.
Cool.
So these fellas that have got this pelt from this Queensland tiger, dog-headed tiger,
Yes.
they're way up North Queensland. Whereabouts in Queensland
No,
are they?
Just over the border,
Oh, okay.
along the Queensland border.
Right, out near Texas. Out that way.
I couldn't say.
Yeah.
But Neville Smart, he went up there around,
Yeah.
and he said he saw two.
He saw two of them. Wow.
Might have been on different occasions,
Yep.
but he got a sighting of two.
Well, I've actually got a photocopy of, I think it's Joseph Banks' diary from when he was on the Endeavour, and when they had to repair the Endeavour at Cooktown, and they were in dry dock basically for a couple of weeks or a month. And in his report, he talks about striped tigers on the beach in Cooktown. They were seeing them then.
Yes.
So yeah, that's actually in Joseph Banks' diary from the first
Oh,
from the
yes.
Endeavour in 1770 or whatever it was.
Mm.
So yeah, they've been documented many times, but no one's ever really officially done anything about it. It's unusual.
Well, there's a woman, originally an English woman, and she's living up at, about as far up Queensland as you can.
Yeah.
and she was taking credit, plastic house, and she looked on as a nutter, and she was talking about these dog-headed cats.
Yep.